Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon or this morning, depending upon where you are. I'm Ryan Stenvick. I'm a vice president here at Acara Solutions. And for those that don't know, we're a global talent solutions firm providing recruitment, employer of record, and other talent solutions to a variety of industries across a variety of job types. And I'm excited to be here today and welcome you to our conversation all about employee value propositions. So important in today's market more than ever before. And I'm excited to have our partner Shayna from Lattice joining us. And so Shayna, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll get things kicked off.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me. Very excited to talk about this very important topic for employers. I'm Shayna Bulluck. I am the recruiting programs manager at Lattice. And if you're not familiar with what Lattice is or what they do, what we do, we're a performance platform that partners with clients and employers to help them be the best version of themselves for their employees. We have an offering of a lot of different tools that enable you to be your best managers, be the best, and have the best employees, and make them sure that they're happy. So that's what we do at Lattice. And then me particularly, I manage the intersection of recruiting and offerings and programs for the Lattice brand. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Shayna. And I can say we are Lattice customers, and it is a
Yes.
great platform and definitely something that everyone should check out, because if you're not using something, it really amplifies, I think, everything that we try to do, right, to help our employees and be better managers. Well, so a couple of things before we dive in. So as we go through the conversation today, we're going to be posting a couple of poll questions. You'll see it in the chat window. So if you see a little red dot show up next to your chat, that means that there's a new chat there. And that's how we'll be communicating any questions along the way that you have. You can put them in there. We'll put the poll questions in there. And then we're hoping at the end that we'll have some time to do some live Q&A. We'll turn off the mutes and you can fire off your questions. So before we hear about Shayna's journey or Lattice's journey in developing their employee value proposition, we thought it would be important to define what is an EVP. What are we even talking about today, right? And I read an article that I thought did a good job defining what an employee value proposition is, and what they said is it's the promise you make as an employer to your employees in return for their commitment. I thought that was a pretty interesting way to look at it. And so I'm curious, of those that we have on the phone today, how many of you are actively, working on your employee value proposition, or maybe have it on your, 2023 agenda list? And the poll should pop there into your chat. I'm not able to see at the moment how many are saying yes or no, but go ahead and submit that. Oh, here we go. 83% is what I'm seeing are actively developing an EVP. Well, then, welcome. You're in the right conversation. This is great. This is great. And so, diving in here, so I mentioned it earlier, right? Today, more than ever, it's important to have a strong employee value proposition. Having a diverse workforce, right, requires a compelling EVP. So you have to think of it as the total value an employee receives from the company, right? So it's, of course, compensation, it's medical benefits, 401k, PTO, but it's also career progression. What can they expect from the kind of the vibe of the company, right? And the culture. Those are all important things. And the EVP defines that the commitment the company is going to make to develop the employees in exchange for all the work and effort that an employee puts in, to benefit the company, right? And make the company successful. So as I think about these things, right, in my role, because EVP is just one part of the employee experience, I have to think, well, gosh, so what, right? We do so much already, like why is an EVP important? Why are we going to invest time in that? Well, it's important because research has shown that 75% of employees research a brand before submitting a job application. And I emphasize before because it's before your recruiters or your hiring managers or anyone from the company has the opportunity to talk to them about what it's like, right? They're forming their own opinion based on what they're finding online, often, right? Oftentimes on the career page. And so an effective EVP helps to attract the talent that you're looking for, right? And also differentiate yourself from your competition. Super important in today's times, right? Because we know the competition is fierce for the best talent. So it needs to be unique, it needs to be authentic, and um, it needs to be in alignment with what you're looking for, right? So it can't just be something that you magically think up, right? It needs to be something that is really true to your company. So here's another reason why an EVP is necessary, is that a successful EVP will result in improved talent outcomes. Employees will be better performers, which will help business. And as we know, engaged employees are 87% less likely to leave their jobs than disengaged counterparts, right? So developing this EVP will help retention, reduce attrition, and we all know the expense of losing good talent, right? So it's a critical part of attracting and retaining the types of employees that you want and that you need within your organization. So it's your first defense, kind of, right? Or your first offense, depending upon how you look at it, right? To getting that talent. So how do you develop, right? So how do you develop an EVP that's right for your company? And Austin, if you could change the slide. We're going to drop another poll in the chat there of, I'm curious, what do you guys think is the greatest differentiator for your organization? It could be that you're diverse, your culture. It could be a bunch of different things, right? Maybe the career path or career growth that you offer. So as you pop them in, there'll be kind of a word cloud that'll pop up here. So I'm seeing employee owned, community involvement, people. That's great. Keep going, drop them in there. Collaborative, awesome. Right. So these are all things that are key parts to your own organizations, right? And that's, I think, an essential part, like we've said, of your EVP. But it's more than, I think, this can't be created in a vacuum, right? So one of the key ways to develop an EVP is to survey your employees, right? Go out to your community of employees and ask them, why do they work there? What do you think? What do they think differentiates your company from others that they're seeing, right? What's their experience? And then you take all of this data. And here's the challenge, right? Is that you've got to take all that data and mold it into something that is a couple of sentences, maybe a short paragraph long. You don't have much, right? You can't tell the 47-page history of your company and everything that makes it great. You got to condense it all, right? And so that's the challenge, is to keep it, again, to several sentences or maybe a short paragraph. And like I've said already a couple times, it has to be authentic. It has to be real, right? And I think you can aspire in some of these, right? But you can't just make it up because it sounds good, right? That won't be effective. So hopefully, I almost forgot to say, when we share our employee value prop guide after this webinar, in there will be some sample survey questions, and I believe some sample kind of EVPs that we thought were effective, that other companies out there have created. So those will be things that'll be coming after the webinar to give you some tools, right, as you develop your EVPs. So with that, I think we've laid the foundation of what's an employee value prop. Why are we all here, right? Giving you some ideas to think about of what makes up an EVP, and a couple of tools with more coming of how you're going to do it, how you're going to get it kicked off. And so I feel like now is a great time to pass it off to Shayna and really, learn more about their experience in developing this. So Shayna, it's all yours.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. When I first joined Lattice at the beginning of January, early January, there was already some kind of a framework that was already in place as far as what Lattice's EVP was, but it sorely and desperately needed to have some updating, which is where it landed on the top of my list to start reworking. So the first step that I did was doing a listening tour. EVPs, at the crux of it, are for your employees, right? Ryan talked about that. And engagement surveys are the perfect and optimal mechanism for you to get started. Find out what's important to them. What's not important to them is also just as important. What are the non-negotiables? All of that will help you outline your core pillars that the EVP should be focused on, and be the main bulk of what your EVP and how it's outlined. I'm not saying to only write what they share with you, but it's definitely a good barometer for you to have in place and to help supplement what ends up getting written. So that, coupled with doing a listening tour with randomly selected employees at all various levels throughout the organization. So you get senior management, you get mid-management, and you get the ICs as well. All of them obviously make up your collective employee base. So making sure that you cover your bases in terms of understanding how and what is important to every single person at various levels is going to make your EVP that much more authentic and relatable. So asking some questions like, what drew you to work at Lattice? What do you like or love about working here? What would you like to see more of? And if you already have established values attached to the company, what's the value that you most identify with? And using those answers to help formulate and help frame once you sit down to actually write your EVP will be really, really instrumental. And again, double click into the authenticity of the EVP. In addition to that, pulling in your leads. The biggest challenge for me when I did have all of that information and all of that data was identifying what the main focus areas and what the pillars should be. The pillars that I knew should be the cornerstone of the EVP. So I worked with our head of L&D. I worked with our head of talent acquisition, our head of people, our head of employee experience, all within the people team and the people umbrella. But each component and each team that we have directly relates to and is directly correlated to what a lot of the main pillars end up coming out from the listening tour and from the engagement survey. So I knew it wasn't feasible to create this all by myself. So making sure that I had those conversations with the leads to get their insight and to get their assistance in writing was going to make the writing of it a lot easier and a lot quicker. So after identifying the pillars that were broad enough, but also captured the areas that were more meaningful, I reached out to the heads, sharing the task at hand and the importance, and request to partner with them to craft the language and the actual document. From there, I set up individual working sessions with each lead and requested they share an already crafted mission statement that they have for their particular team or philosophies with me in advance. And that also helped shape the language that we used within the different pillars. Already having a philosophy in place is a great start and a great jump, and it can easily pave the way for what you have incorporated within the EVP. Each meeting was focused on working with what was already developed and adding language to invoke a sense of belonging, which is definitely what you want for your employee base that's already here, but also to inspire future potential employees and making sure that they have something that's connected to or that they can connect themselves to when reading and feeling the EVP. So yeah, Ryan or Austin, you can go to the next slide.
Hey, Shayna.
Yes.
I have a question that
Hit me.
this is not scripted, so I apologize in advance. But, as we were talking about surveys, and even as I was talking about, I was thinking, a lot of companies, I think, are hesitant to survey because you don't know what you're going to get back, right?
Yeah.
And we've done quite a bit of surveying here at Acara, and sometimes it's like real, right? The feedback is real. And so I'm curious, was there, did you experience that where you got some real honest feedback that maybe people weren't ready to hear? And how did you approach that, and kind of, I don't know, navigate it internally, maybe not directly with, the employees, but with, management as you worked with them, right, to craft the EVP and also, maybe adjust or change some cultural things that came up or something.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it was kind of fortuitous timing of when we released and send out the engagement survey, coupled with when I started out working on the EVP. We do a yearly, oh no, it's a biannual engagement survey to our employees, because we want to make sure that we're staying true and we're listening and we're doing the work based off of what comes out of the engagement survey. If one of the benefits is something that's missing and that's coming up time and time again in the engagement survey, that's obviously something that we need to work on providing to our employees to make sure that they stay happy and engaged. So I think it's really important to understand the underlying reason of doing the engagement survey. And yes, like you said, you're going to hear things that are not going to be happy. You can't please everybody. And we want to make sure that we have a mechanism and a safe space for people to be able to communicate what they do and don't like about working at the company. And not just for the purposes of the EVP, just across the board. Is their workload too hard or too heavy? Do they feel like they're getting paid enough? Whatever the case may be. So being able to create actionable and fixable items coming from that engagement survey is what we're here for, what the people team is meant to be. So I think it can often be tough love to hear what you don't want to hear from your employee base, but in order to make sure, I'm trying to get my words right, in order to make sure that we are continuing to provide and be happy and provide a space for our employees to be happy, love coming to work every day, we need to ask those tough questions and oftentimes get that tough answer just to incorporate and make sure that we're continuing to be a better company for our people.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for asking. All right. So the Lattice Promise is what I dubbed our EVP. I didn't want just EVP to be the main thing that everyone referred to because, I mean, as Ryan said earlier, it is your promise to what you are going to be offering your employees in return for them signing on their offer letter to come and work for us and their services of what they're doing for the company. So drafting. Uh-oh. Sorry, just completely lost. There we go. For me, for someone who isn't a writer, I don't think I've written so much outside of college and having to write a plethora of college essays. So after I met with all the leads and getting their thoughts and the brain dumps down, I took to actually making sense of all of the words that I had right in front of me in the main document. A very important part of the process was sending completion updates along the way. Having a project plan, outlining the goals, the smaller tasks, the DRIs, directly responsible individuals, and most importantly, the deadlines for the completion. That plan I shared with my manager, who is the director of talent acquisition. I shared it with our CPO, our HR director, our people ops director, and our CEO. So zero pressure having all of those eyes on it. But because this is something that is so instrumental and the foundation of the company, obviously having those particular eyes on it is going to be just beneficial, and wanting to make sure that what is written and what comes out of it is in alignment with what their goals are and what their vision is for the company. Anyone who knows or anyone who has a project management mindset knows why creating that project plan and then sending it and sharing it out is important. It helps you to stay accountable and on time with your deliverable. It helps you, before you get to working on anything, think through each individual step, picture the whole project from start to finish. Plus, if any deadlines that you are outlined start to look like they aren't going to be met, you have the email thread, you have the communication piece and pillar in place in order to give your stakeholders a heads up to know what to expect or not expect at that time. The second step, so after the draft stage, second step was the edit stage. I'm very lucky that I have in-house marketing, branding, and communications gurus who they all had a copy of the EVP and have the intrinsic Lattice voice in their mind. So they can take anything that you give them and turn it into something that is united with everything else that comes from the Lattice front. Once I had the document to a point that I felt proud of and good to share with, I shared it with them, and they did they did their magic. They worked their magic to get it to have that Lattice voice and that Lattice speak. So from there, once they did their editing to the high heavens, we got into the final shiny piece of beauty. It was time to share the final product with our CEO for approval and for feedback. Praise be, he loved it. So all of our work wasn't for naught. But then from there, the next step was sharing it with the rest of Lattice, sharing it with the company. I engaged our branding department to Latticefy the document, so it made it nice and pretty. And created a page for it to be viewable on our intranet. So employees will be able to constantly go to it and see it and checking in on it if there's any changes and whatnot. And then I requested to be a part of our bi-weekly all hands. We have a bi-weekly all hands where we give updates to the broader business. And this was the perfect opportunity to say, like, hey, we have a new EVP. These are our determined promises that we're giving you. And let's talk about it. So like I said, I named it the Lattice Promise and walked them through what the promises meant. The first one being, it's our promise to Lutetians, current and future. Sorry, Lutetians is what we call Lattice employees. So it's our promise to Lutetians, current and future. It's how we'll hold ourselves accountable for decisions, big, meaty, hairy decisions, and it's fluid and updatable. This is not a set it and forget it document or piece by any means. It's going to be constantly changing. It should grow with your company as the company grows, and ebb and flow with what's important, what's not as important, as well as what you've decided as a company to offer to your employees. So again, it's fluid and updatable. And then walk them through each of the promises. So the main pillars that I came up with was the main overarching promise, total rewards, which is benefits, everything that we're offering from that perspective, the workplace experience. So what, if that's at home, if that's in an office, how do you as an employee feel when you're sitting down to do your job? DEIB, so diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, employee growth and development. So not performance management, that's our L&D, over L&D promise. So after I presented that to the all hands, sent out the link to where the intranet or to where the EVP lived on our intranet, so everyone could directly go there and check it out. And now, which is what I'm in the midst of right now, is working on creating the campaign to share it externally. So typically, EVPs aren't a document that's just put out front on people's websites. It's woven into the fabric of your careers page or just your company's website as a whole. But I wanted to take a little bit of a different take on it and actually put it up front and center for everyone to be able to read and not have to try to figure out what is the feel, what is the culture like at Lattice. So I'm working right now on revamping our About Us section, and we'll have a tab specifically outlining what our EVP is and saying this is the Lattice promise and this is what you can expect as a potential client, potential partner, but more importantly, or most importantly, a potential candidate. This is how you can get the feel for what the company is before you potentially sign up for us. So going back to that statistic that Ryan said earlier, about 75% of folks researching the brand, I want to be able to have it at a great place right in front and center for them to be able to understand what it's like to be here at Lattice. So I wanted to take a step further, put it on the website. So last week I met with our communications director to game plan a social media campaign that we'll be doing later on this year, which will be the mechanism to help share the Lattice Promise externally. You absolutely don't have to do that path, or just create it and work on it and then weave it into your website if that's what you want to do. And that's perfectly fine. And yeah, so I would love to be able to share what the Lattice Promise is with you, but it's kind of under lock and key right now until we officially share it out externally. But that was kind of the whole process, or not kind of, it was the whole process of what we went through. And it probably took me about 3 to 4 months from start to finish to get it all done, even though we're not even finished yet. Still have to do the external push, but it's exhilarating experience and actually made me feel more connected to the company, knowing that this is something that's so important, and it's a vessel that is sharing what's important to our employees externally, and that's just a really important piece and really important job to have. So that's it from my side of things.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like we're at the car show and you just told us about the new model that's super cool, but we're not pulling the sheet off yet, right?
Oh, she's staying on.
Oh, that's awesome. So a question, you said it took like 3 or 4 months.
Yep.
And is that what you thought it would take? Or did you
Oh,
plan for less or more time?
I planned for less only because we had already had something in place. So it was really just reframing and reworking it. But as I started to get into it, those deadlines that I talked about being in my project plan, I did not meet a single one of them. I had to give constant updates to everyone. Like, this is taking a little bit more time than I anticipated. So we're going to push this out 1 or 2 weeks. And I probably should have done the invert, or the opposite of planning for more so I can overpromise. No, under promise, over deliver. That probably should have been the way that I went about it, knowing how meaty and important this is. I should have allotted for more time, especially because I started off with the listening tour, having those conversations, taking everything down, and making sure that I hit various sections of the business. That's probably the part that took the most time. So if you don't go that route, you won't have as much time that's needed to be dedicated to the crafting phase. But that's just something that I wanted to make sure it was plugged in.
Yeah, yeah. And for those that don't know, I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Lattice has employees kind of spread out, right? You're not all one centrally located.
That's correct. We're remote hybrid first. So we've got our main offices are in San Francisco, New York, and London. But we're all over the place. Like me personally, I'm based in Austin. We've got probably about 10 other folks who are in the Austin area, but we don't have an office here. So that's another great offering that we have, is the ability to work wherever you are. But to your point, which I think why you were asking, is everything couldn't have been me walking around the office and just having off the cuff conversations with people. It had to be planned, had to be dedicated online. And yeah, it's just extra time that had to go into it for sure.
Right, right. And I'm not going to promise that this is my last question, but it might be.
Don't.
Um, so it sounds like you partnered with a lot of, internal partners. You mentioned marketing, your branding group, right? And I know everyone on the call is busy, right? And we don't have, this is like one more thing that, these HR or talent acquisition professionals have. So and I'm sure that's the case for you too. So was there one particular group that you leaned on that you were like so thankful? And I think I might know the answer, but I'm just thinking like, again, what would be the first step for some of these folks, right, to even get this kicked off?
Ooh, that's a great question. Well, I'll put it back to you. What do you think the answer is? And I'll
I feel
say,
like the answer would be your marketing group or
yes,
the people that helped you kind of take your words, thoughts, and all that writing and craft it into the
100%.
diamond. Yeah.
100%. I mean, It would have been an enormous lift, an enormous undertaking if I recognized that we needed to revamp our EVP and y'all need to go write it and just left it at that. But I did, or me in partnership with all of the leads that I mentioned, we brought them the copy and all they had to do was kind of tweak and edit. I'm not taking away from the genius that they are. It wasn't just a quick pass. But if not for their prowess and their abilities to make it latticey, it wouldn't be the document that it is today by any means. So that having someone either officially in title or unofficially, like that they just have really great voice and really great writing and editing abilities, lean on that person to help you sway and get it to where it needs to be able to share it externally.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that because I think it's often a missed opportunity within our own organization, and I'm sure others too, that sometimes you have someone, let's say they're in accounting, maybe that's a bad example. Maybe they're in engineering or they're in some other department, not marketing, but yet they have a marketing degree or they just have a passion. They're a writer. They're
Exactly.
a creative thinker, right? Like, so I think leveraging the talent that you have within the greater organization, um,
Totally.
and that's part of, I think, survey and engagement with your workforce, that again helps retention, right? Because you can, maybe they're in a certain job that they are they're good at, but it's not their passion, right? And they have
Yeah.
other aspirations. And if you don't know that, and they don't know that they have that opportunity, you may
Mhm.
lose them before you even know it, right? And so,
Right.
anyways, I'm getting off on a tangent, but I just find that interesting, and I'm glad that you brought it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're like 35 minutes after the hour, um, and I'm looking at the chat. I've seen, there's been some questions. Let me see if there's any questions that anyone has, or I don't know if can unmute everyone if we want to do live questions. If not, people can put them in the chat.
One question that we have is really where to start. What's the first step?
Yeah, if you're not lucky like me and not having something already in place, I think that engagement survey is a great step. If not the engagement survey, then the listening tour, just striking out with some random, you can tap your talent acquisition team to ask them like who are some good hiring managers or who are some good team members that they work with consistently that have a good pulse on the business, or not the business, but on working at Lattice. Also, not only different levels, but also different tenures throughout different tenures that have been at the company. So folks who have been with the company for sub a year, for 3 to 5 years, as well as like maybe 6+, making sure you have that cross intersection as well, and just asking those questions, which I think we can share afterwards. As a good starting point to help start generating content and to start to get your brain juices flowing.
Yeah, and I would imagine that having executive level buy-in is probably important, right? To help
100%.
drive feedback. Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Another question is, does your company also give employees total compensation statements?
We do. We have our performance reviews are done at a different time than our compensation reviews. We don't want to give the implication or the understanding that that compensation is directly tied to performance. We want them to be separate. So during the compensation cycle, we just had our performance review, and are now going into our compensation review. Once we have those conversations with our managers, they'll send us each total compensation statements.
Great. We have another one. Besides your initial surveying, how did you help ensure all ethnicities, genders, and groups of people are represented, and that your EVP will help to attract underrepresented? people?
Yep. DEIB was one of the main core pillars that we have within the Lattice Promise. I'm also a chair on one of our ERGs, one of our employee resource groups here. And I made sure that, thank you for asking this question because I definitely didn't talk about it. I made sure that of the folks that I did the listening tour with, that I at least had three to four from each one of our 8 ERGs as a part of the listening tour. Great question. Because that's important, right? Like everyone needs to be represented. Everyone needs to have something that they can directly connect and tie to, whether it be the entire piece or just one portion of it. So you want to make sure that you're speaking to your collective employee base for sure.
Yeah, that's great. So what is your guess as far as if you didn't already have something to start with, how long would you map out the process, from start to finish, if you didn't have, you're starting from scratch?
Right. That definitely, one, depends on the size of your company. Lattice, we're a little over 700 folks. But the key point of it also being a recruiting tool is you're speaking to potential countless amount of people. But starting from scratch to finish, I'd probably say 3 to 5 months. And this is also, if this is your sole thing that you're working, your sole project and your sole job that you're working on, that will shrink down the amount of time that you will need to put into this. If you're also juggling multiple other hats and this is just one piece of it, I would extend that a little bit more so you don't do what I did and not meet any of the deadlines that I self-subscribed or self-prescribed. Yeah, I would say anywhere from 3 to 5.5 months, start to finish from scratch.
Nice. And then for large global organizations that operate by region or division, should there be different EVPs based on each region or division?
Great question. So yeah, I said earlier that we have an office in London, and making sure that one of or two of the leads that I had that I connected with put me in contact with 2 other people on our people team that were based in London to make sure that what we were saying, because we also had the overarching one, like the main Mamma Jamma promise, and making sure that each individual pillar spoke to not just our US folks, but also the collective international base as well. So they were my gut checkers. They were my, not gut checkers, what's the word? Fail safes, for lack of a better word. Checks and balances. They were my checks and balances. Into making sure that it wasn't just speaking to our US employees or potential employees, but also our London folks who was also more on the international front. So if you have folks in other regions, making sure that they're tapped into your listening tour, that you're partnering with them to help write it as well. So you have the collective international voice and not just one geographical location.
But it should be one overarching EVP.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because it's your main company. You think of it from Lattice period, or from your company period, not Lattice your company in EMEA or your company in wherever. It just needs to be that one place, one document.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And another question, how often do you revisit the compensation model to ensure fairness?
I wish I had my finance person next to me. They do, I want to say 3 or 4 times, oh no, quarterly. They do quarterly compensation review or salary reviews internally. And if they find any discrepancy or any needs for changes, they'll do it on the spot then and not wait until the next compensation review cycle happens. So yeah, we do it on a quarterly basis to make sure that not only what we are paying our folks who are currently here is fair and equitable, but the salary bands that we have that we're giving to folks who are just coming in, that is in line with the market and in line with internal equity as well.
Nice.
I like these questions.
I know, we're getting some great questions. So I know one question that's come up is survey platforms, and there's so many out there. Obviously, we know which one you're going to recommend.
I was about to say, this is an opportunity for a shameless plug here.
But, maybe what is it, that Lattice offers? What are those critical pieces that you want to make sure your survey platform has in order to be successful? Which of course Lattice has, but
Of course we do. Yes, it's a fantastic survey. If I don't say so myself. And we also do like pulse surveys that will come up, I think like once a month in the Lattice platform. We'll get a notification like, here's a quick pulse survey, and it's just 5 quick questions that are randomly generated and sent. So we're constantly getting data, and we're constantly staying in tune with everything that the team is doing, or everything that the employees are doing and feeling about the company. So with the actual engagement survey itself, first, anonymity is paramount and crucial. Everyone needs to have and feel they have that safe space to say exactly how they're feeling without any repercussions or backlash, for lack of a better word. So that's the first point. And making sure that you're covering every aspect of their job and every aspect of what they are hoping to get and to feel as being a Lattice employee, or being just employee wherever your company is. So talk about workload, talk about manager relationship, talk about what's it like, the 360. So your working relationship with your manager, your expectations of you working with your direct reports, with your peers, whatever that case may be, and getting that full well-rounded picture. And then you jump into the different pillars that you have. Talk about compensation, talk about their workplace experience, talk about DEI, talk about recruiting, whatever is deemed from having certain conversations as important for you. You want to make sure that that's in the engagement survey, so you're getting that constant data and getting that information to work on for the next time.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the questions that we have. Unless anyone else wants to add anything in the chat. But that's all we have up to this point.
And man, I'll tell you, I think we had 45 minutes slated, and we're 45 minutes on the dot.
Look at that.
That's amazing. Well, thank you again, Shayna, for all of your input and time. I think this was really great. And I see a question just popped up. And yes, we will share, as a follow-up, we'll share some sample EVPs, some survey questions, kind of a guide to get you going, and we'll send that out to everyone. But again, thank you for everyone who made time and contributed here and participated and just made it here. And thank you again, Shayna, and thanks for the whole team. And I hope you guys have a great rest of the day.
Thank you for having me. Y'all take care.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.